Hi everyone, welcome to our latest game. For Christmas, picked up a bunch of stuff which you've already seen a video on, and I got a voucher from my parents. So I bought a couple of books for myself. I bought a couple of scenario books from the General de Brigade series, and as a result of that, I got a few new games to play on the channel which you won't have seen before, so hopefully we'll enjoy that. So the first one we're going to play is the Battle of Brunswick in 1809. So I'm sure a bunch of you know, but in 1809 Napoleon was attacked by Austria with a degree of surprise. The Austrians launched their assault before Napoleon was ready, and it led to the 1809 campaign that led to the culmination at the Battle of Wagram. Now, as part of that, the Austrians set in motion two small forces tasked with knocking out some of Napoleon's allies. One Austrian-led force of Austrians, Hessians and Brunswickers set out from Bohemia to invade Saxony, and another force invaded Poland. And a lot of the forces to defend against these were away with Napoleon's main army confronting the main Austrian forces. So as a result, these subsidiary attacks actually had at least a degree of success, and I think Warsaw was captured. And indeed, this force that advanced into Bohemia also captured Dresden. But then with the defeat of the main Austrian armies at Wagram, the Austrian forces from these two subsidiary attacks withdrew. However, the Duke of Brunswick refused to accept this result and marched northwards to the city of Brunswick, his ancestral home, and looked to raise force and raise rebellion against the oppressive forces of Napoleon. And in the end, these forces marched all the way to the coast and indeed were taken on by the British Navy and were subsequently deployed with the British as the Black Brunswickers fighting in the peninsula. So they're quite a well-renowned force, but this is the Brunswick army. It's really just a small regiment that took place in the campaign in Germany. So let's look at what the Brunswickers have in play today. So we have 3 battalions for the Brunswickers. I'm using my 1815 troops because I don't have the forces for the 1809 campaign because they really only just fought this one battle. And they all had long tufted plumes like the Lieb battalion does in 1815. So we have a battalion here protecting this hedge line. This is newly raised conscripts that the Duke of Brunswick raised. It's his 3rd battalion. He raised these when he advanced into the city of Brunswick, and they were called to the colours. We have the 2nd battalion, which is here. This is a reasonably well-trained set of Brunswickers that had been training with the Duke, with the forces of Austria, and conducted this assault. And as you can see, he's got one small artillery battery with 2 guns here deployed into the village, and we have another 2 guns with his artillery. And then finally we have his best quality battalion, his 1st battalion here, which we'll be counting as, for this game, just to show the difference in quality of troops against the forces he's facing. I think these ones count as at least veterans and possibly elite. Supporting him, we have 2 units of cavalry that fought in this campaign. We've got a large unit of Death's Head's Hussars, and indeed, like all of the Brunswick troops, all dressed in black with a little bit of blue trim. And then we have the 2nd gun, or 2nd set of 2 guns on this hill, and they're supporting the Brunswick Uhlans. So a small force, we'll count them as 2 brigades, 1 cavalry brigade and 1 infantry brigade, and we'll give the Duke of Brunswick an extra dice, as he seemed to perform pretty well against these forces. Okay, so we're facing off against a mixture of troops from the Confederation of the Rhine, and we'll just step through those in a second. Okay, so the forces facing the Brunswickers are those of King Jerome of Westphalia. So Jerome Bonaparte, as also employed at Waterloo, will be on the field today. So he's got a regiment here of conscripts in the Westphalian army. They should be dressed in white. I don't actually have any Westphalians, so we've got French troops standing in for him today. So that's a regiment of conscript status Westphalians, the 1st regiment. We've then got a artillery battery for the Westphalians, and a 2nd regiment of Westphalian troops. This is we got the 1st and the 6th regiments on the table, both being covered by French troops. And supporting them, we have a small regiment of troops from Berg, and we are using my Berg figures. Let's give you a shot of those. They'll be taking their position. They were in reserve in this battle. And finally, just moving up in support through the woods, we have a unit of Westphalian cuirassiers. That's only a small unit, and again we have French stand-ins today. So we've got a fairly high quality Brunswick force here, facing a bunch of conscripts under Jerome's command. So the Westphalians will have 4 ADCs. In fact, I might only give them 3 ADCs because of Jerome's poor generalship. So yes, we'll give them 3 ADCs, 1 for each of the infantry regiments. We won't give them 1 for that sole cuirassier unit. All right. So the objectives for the Westphalians, so they were pretty aggressive in this battle. So their objective is to capture Brunswick, the city of Brunswick, which is there on the edge of the table, protect the route to the north, and prevent the Brunswickers continuing their march north, and destroy them. So a fairly offensive set of orders for these conscripts. The requirements for the Duke of Brunswick are ideally to defeat this Westphalian force, but without fail to advance north through this blocking force so they can continue their march to the coast. All right, we'll kick off with turn 1. Okay, we've rolled for ADCs and for initiative. The Westphalians got all of their 3 ADCs active, and they've put infantry assault on the Westphalian regiment, which is in a position to potentially start attacking the city of Brunswick and the Brunswickers who are in position in front of them. All other brigades were activated. For the Brunswickers, they only got 2 ADCs, and unfortunately their infantry brigade has gone hesitant, but their cavalry is active this turn, and the Brunswickers do have initiative. So it'll be charges, which I don't believe there will be any of, as everything's too far apart at this stage, and then movement as we start turn 1. Okay, so we've completed movement in turn 1. So the Westphalians, I've checked all the morale statuses. The Westphalians will be rated as conscripts. The Berg infantry are reservists, so they will default to conscript status once they've taken 4 casualties. And the Westphalian artillery is also a reservist category. The Brunswickers are elite, veteran and conscript for their 3 battalions. And then for their cavalry all counts as elite. The remaining units, the cuirassier cavalry, is also conscript for the Westphalians, so they may not stand up too well despite their elite status, or supposed elite status. All right, so the Westphalians have moved forward with their 1st regiment, and the Berg are moving up, as I said, in support. The other Westphalian regiment has remained stationary this term. It doesn't have infantry assault orders, so it does not have to move forward, and I guess it's slightly cautious without its cavalry support being in place, given the mass of Brunswick cavalry that is facing off against it. All right, turning to firing, the Brunswickers will go first. Okay, so we're going to open fire with the Brunswicker skirmishers here. They are a mixture of Schutzen and Jägers, and one of those units is rifle-armed. So I'm going to use the rifle-armed troops with their extended 15-inch range to open fire against this battery. And the others will fire at the French skirmisher screen, or rather Westphalian skirmisher screen, screening this regiment. So 4 bases will normally get, how many did 4 bases get? 3 dice. So we will put 1 onto the artillery battery, 2 into the skirmisher screen, and we'll lose one of those dice for firing at the skirmisher screen. So first dice will be firing at the artillery, doesn't do a casualty, and then firing at the skirmishers, doesn't do a casualty. Okay, so that's the firing from the Brunswick skirmish screens. We'll now fire the 2 small double gun batteries of the Brunswickers at the advancing Westphalian forces. Okay, so we'll open fire from the village against these advancing Westphalian columns. We'll use the garrison fire first, and the artillery battery there will count as a battalion gun, so it'll give an extra combat dice to firing, but we'll only have a 12-inch range, the same range that the musketry fire would have out of the built-up area. So let's fire with those. So we get 3 dice for the garrison, and we'll get 1 extra dice for the artillery piece. So we'll fire at this closest battalion. Wow, that's pretty good. That's 3 casualties in the opening round against these Westphalians. Okay, and I just checked, and indeed we rolled a double 6, as you may well have seen in that skirmish firing. And if you roll a double 6, you do impose a discipline test as well as the casualties. So this is a discipline test on that Westphalian unit. They roll a 6, and they're conscripts, so that would be down to a 5, but they are in column, takes them up to a 6. So no major effect, but they will go unformed. For the 2-gun battery that was attached to the artillery, we've used a proxy of the battalion gun rule. So we're simply giving it 1 artillery dice, and if it rolls a 4, 5 or 6, it causes a casualty at whatever range. It's nice and simple, and feels fairly consistent with what we would do if that was attached to an infantry battalion. And obviously, as it's attached to cavalry, it can't do that. So it did roll, it rolled a 5, so we have caused 1 casualty against this infantry battalion of the Westphalians that's in position down here. All right, that's it for firing for the for the Brunswickers. We'll do some return fire from the Westphalian skirmish screen. 5, they cause 1 casualty on the Brunswickers, and that will be the end of turn 1. Okay, so we've rolled for ADCs, and the Brunswickers have successfully put skirmisher tasking on their skirmisher screen and otherwise activated both their brigades. For the Westphalians, we've got infantry assault off against the Berg infantry now. So both of these brigades have infantry assault and are both active, as is the attached artillery battery. But the brigade down here, which didn't move last turn, actually has gone hesitant this turn. So it did not move, but the cuirassiers are in motion. So Brunswickers to go first, and let's see how this attack develops. Okay, so not too much movement from the Brunswickers, but looks like they may be up to something. They've redeployed their elite infantry battalion from that field behind the town of Brunswick, and it's now moved into the centre of Brunswick itself. So we'll see how that move develops. And you may have spotted we did not fire our Westphalian artillery in the first turn. That was a bit remiss. We'll do that now. They were active last turn. It'll be a standard shot at long range, and they'll fire, I think, in support of the assault. No, I think they'll fire at those hussars because they see them as a major threat and a very large unit. And they're more of a threat to the artillery than the infantry embedded in the town. So let's see how they did last turn. They rolled a 4. That will be nothing at long range. Nope, no effect. All right, now let's do their movement for the Westphalians in turn 2. All right, let's do firing in turn 2. So the garrison of Brunswickers will open fire against this Westphalian battalion that's encroaching. Again, with its attached gun, it causes 2 casualties there on this attacking Westphalian battalion, but no discipline test. The Brunswickers will then fire their line battalion. We'll just check the range, make sure from flag to flag they've got enough of their unit in sight and are not covered by their own skirmisher screen. Back in a second. Okay, they are in range and they can see, but it will be an inferior volley as only half to 3/4 of the battalion can form a line of sight onto this attacking Westphalian battalion. They roll a 6, so that will be a superior volley. No, they're the conscripts, so it won't be a superior volley. It'll be an inferior volley. A 6 is... and it will be an inferior volley anyway, because that's what I just said. That will be 1 more casualty on the Westphalians. And then finally, we will fire our skirmisher screens. So again, 1 gun at the artillery, doesn't cause a casualty, and 1 gun against the Westphalian skirmish screen, which causes another casualty. I'll mark them up, and we'll then do the Westphalian return fire. Okay, so in turn 2, the Westphalian skirmisher screen has fired, and it's proved effective. Despite being very small, it rolled another 6, caused another casualty on the Brunswicker skirmishers that are opposing them. Otherwise, none of the rest of this infantry will fire, as they're all moving up. It'll be pretty ineffective. And we will now fire the artillery battery against the Brunswickers who are behind the hedge, especially as the Brunswick cavalry shows no sign of moving forward. So again, this will probably be at long range, and it'll be -1 because they're in cover behind that hedgerow. They roll a 4, that goes down to a 3. Unfortunately, the Westphalians aren't doing well. That will be a fatigue casualty against their own artillery battery. Okay, so a good turn of activity for ADCs and activations for the Westphalians. All Westphalian regiments are active this turn, so that's really good. They can potentially start assaulting against the Brunswicker positions this turn, and their cavalry can go, and this infantry regiment could move forward. The Brunswickers were also successful. They went for rerolls and have activated both their brigades, but the Westphalians had their initiative. So let's see if we have any charges as the Westphalians get the opportunity to strike the first blow as we move into turn 3. So quite a lot of action as we start turn 3 with charges. So the Westphalian regiment here has charged into the town of Brunswick. 1st Battalion leading with 2 battalions in support. The Berg regiment has also moved up and forward. It charged the Brunswicker skirmish screen. They successfully passed their discipline test and fell back without being dispersed. And this regiment continues to push forward against that hedge line and that battalion of Brunswick conscripts. The artillery here will provide support as those attacks go in. And as we look over here on the hill, the cuirassiers, who are just coming out of the woods, have declared a charge and gone in against the Brunswick Uhlans. We'll see how they do as they try and charge home there. So we'll do charge results first. These ones charging into the village will just have to take some shooting casualties. So again, 4 casualties, 3 for the garrison and 1 for the attached battalion gun, but they will automatically charge home. So that is no casualties, because we need to roll a 5 or a 6, I think, for garrison fire. So no casualties. I should do 1 separately. All right, if that 4 was the artillery, it would be a casualty. So I'll roll this dice. If it's a 4, it'll be an artillery shot, and if it's a 5 or 6, I'll have to roll again. I do roll again. Okay, a 1. No, it wasn't that dice. So yeah, no casualties from the defensive fire there from the garrison. All right, we will also have a defensive shot from the inverted commas battalion gun that's supporting the Uhlans. Let's see if that does anything against the cuirassiers as they charge in. No, it doesn't. All right, so now on to charge resolution. As I say, the charge against the city of Brunswick will go ahead successfully. We'll now have to roll to see how the cuirassiers do against those Uhlans. Okay, let's do the combat resolution, or the charge results, as these cuirassiers try and charge in against these Uhlans. Okay, just rolling for the cuirassiers. The lancers will be actually on +2, mainly because of their elite status, offset to a degree by the fact that the Westphalians are heavy cavalry. All right, the Westphalians roll a 10 and the Uhlans roll a 6. So the 6 goes to an 8. So the Westphalians have 1 by 2. So that leaves to a melee. So we'll see how we do as we move into melee at the later stage of the turn. Okay, so the Westphalian artillery is going to do its final shot before it's finally screened by its own troops against those Brunswickers behind the hedge. Let's see how we do. The other firing this turn was pretty much all taken up in the charge phase. 1 more casualty did go on the artillery battery from the Brunswicker riflemen. You can see opposite them just there. So they roll a 9, and that's pretty good. So at long range, that'll be 1 casualty and a discipline test, but that'll be at -1 because of the cover of the hedge. So simply 1 casualty against those Brunswickers. All right, that's it for firing. We're now on to combat in turn 3. Okay, let's see how we do as the Westphalians charge into the town. The Brunswickers will have 1 more dice as they are defending a built-up area, but no side have yet reached their casualty limit. Both sides, if we go into a second round of combat, will have supports. The Westphalians have these 2 battalions that are available to support their attack, and the Brunswickers also have 2 battalions they could throw in. Let's see how we do. Okay, that 3 there is a separate dice. So the Brunswickers have caused 3 casualties and the Westphalians only 2. I think the Brunswickers will hold the village. Let's look at that. Winner by 1. And actually against a built-up area we get the opportunity to fight on a separate round. The decision is made by the defender. Given they're defending Brunswick and the city of Brunswick, they will not give ground. So we will move into a second round of combat. Let's mark up those casualties and do round 2. Okay, so this result could go either way. The Westphalians get 2 full strength battalions to throw in. There'll be 5 dice each, and they will not have to pay a penalty for fighting into a built-up area in the second turn. So the attacking battalion that's already gone in would get its dice back because it's the second turn of fighting in a built-up area, but it's now on 6 casualties, so it would lose 1. So that'll be 14 dice for the Brunswickers, and it'll also be 14 dice for the Westphalians. It'll also be 14 dice for the Brunswickers, as they can throw their conscripts in, and our elite troops are unformed, so we lose the dice from that. There may be some morale adjustments, so I will just check those before I roll. Okay, well, just before we do the second round of combat, we will just double check this. So I hadn't taken account of the morale difference. So we have conscripts fighting veterans in the village, so the Brunswickers would have got 2 further dice. So let's see whether they got any more casualties from those. So cocked dice. Let's roll that second one. No, they don't. Okay, so we will be on to a second round. Right, let's calculate it out again. Okay, let's do the assaulting battalions first. So the Westphalians will go up to 5 dice, as that's the second round of fighting in built-up combat in a built-up area, but lose 1 because they are on 6 casualties. The Brunswickers will be on 5 dice, but gain 2 for being 2 morale grades better than the Westphalians. So let's do those first 2 battalions first. Okay, so the Westphalians cause 2 further casualties, and the Brunswickers cause 4 further casualties. So we do all this cumulatively for all 3 battalions, so we'll keep a running total. So that's the first 2. We'll now do the second Westphalian battalion. This one is undamaged. It gets 5 dice. And the Brunswickers will get 5 dice. This is their elite battalion. They will lose 1 for being unformed. They will gain 1 for being elite, and then they will gain 3 for being 3 morale grades higher, I think. So let's see how they do in this second bit of the combat. Okay, so the Westphalians do quite well. They've caused 3 more casualties, so that takes the cumulative Westphalian casualties caused up to 5. We've got 1 reroll for the elite battalion, because that was cocked, but they only caused 2, so it's getting close. And they really did underperform, given all of those dice that turn. So that's 6 casualties to 5. And then we do the final battalions. These are both battalions of conscripts. So 5 for the Westphalians and 5 for the Brunswickers. Brunswickers are red, Westphalians are blue. Wow, great roll by the Brunswickers. They've caused 4 more casualties. So they've now caused 10. And that Westphalian conscript battalion really lost its bottle and only caused 1. Clearly, the vigour of defending their home city really inspired those conscripts. So that's a stunning victory now. It was, as you see, really close. When you're rolling that many dice, it really does get very iffy how that combat's going to go. But in the end, the Brunswickers have held off and driven back those attacking troops, and the Westphalian brigade will be forced to retreat. And as all 3 battalions are retreating, because they were all engaged in that combat, that will be a force test on that brigade. I'll go mark up those casualties on all the relevant units. Okay, so let's see how we do. The Uhlans have countercharged the Cuirassiers. The Uhlans get the benefit of being elite. The Cuirassiers offset that to some extent by being heavy cavalry. Let's see how we do. All right, again, not great for the Westphalians. They look pretty, but they haven't performed particularly well. So 3 casualties caused by the Uhlans. Again, very poor dice rolls by everyone, but the Uhlans have won by 2. We'll mark those casualties up, and I'm sure they'll drive those Cuirassiers away. Okay, so this is a dodgy point in the game for the Westphalians. So one of the victory conditions is for the Brunswickers, if we cause 6 Westphalian units to be broken, routed off the table, or indeed retreating in any turn, the Westphalians lose heart and retire. And actually at the end of that turn we have 3 Westphalian infantry battalions in retreat and their cuirassiers in retreat as well. So 4 of those 6 battalions are retreating at the moment. And we rolled for ADCs, and both sides did pretty appallingly and only managed to pull off 1 ADC. But that does mean that the Westphalians, for their falter tests, will only have 1 falter test they're able to pass. And I was going to deem that that cuirassier unit needed a falter test, given it was the only unit in its mini brigade and was forced to retreat. So I think the Westphalians will just have to sacrifice their cuirassiers, and they will flee off table, and they will use their 1 ADC to try and save this brigade. And we roll a 3. That's not going to be enough. This Westphalian brigade is going to be disheartened by failing to take the village. And on a 3 for conscripts, they retire and will flee off the table. So still a reasonable number of forces on the table for the Westphalians, but it's not looking good. I will check the victory conditions. Okay, I think it's pretty much looking terrible for the Westphalians. Just remembering that the Brunswicker victory conditions are to simply exit a minimum of 3 units off the table. I think the Brunswick cavalry is now effectively able to exit off the table, and almost certainly our elite infantry battalion over here on the right would be able to get off, or if not it, one of the other infantry battalions as the Berg try and stop that. So I think it's all over. I think the Brunswickers have come to a great victory. We will play through turn 4 as the Berg infantry continue to try and assault, not realising that their Westphalian allies are falling away behind them, but haven't yet looked in their rear view mirror to spot it. All right, on we go. Let's do turn 4. Let's roll for initiative. And somewhat remarkably, the Westphalians do have the initiative. Charges to declare. I'm sure that Berg infantry will try and go in. Okay, let's do the defensive firing then as the Brunswickers charge in. Firstly, the skirmishers to the flank of the Brunswick conscripts can get passing fire as those Brunswickers move past them. The first casualty will be taken against that skirmish screen. So 3 shots going against the Brunswickers. They cause 1 casualty, which the skirmish screen does pick up. And so that doesn't go through to the attacking French column. All right, now we'll do a defensive volley from the garrison of Brunswick itself. They weren't charged. They cause 1 casualty on the attacking conscripts. And then we'll do the defensive volley from the Brunswickers behind the hedge. Okay, so the Brunswickers behind the hedge will open fire. This will be an inferior volley, but they roll a 10. That's not bad. These conscripts for the Brunswickers have really proved themselves in this game. So on a 10, that causes, on an inferior volley, 3 casualties in a discipline test. They will also get an extra combat dice because they're firing at a column at close range, which causes another casualty. So that's 4 casualties and a discipline test on this attacking conscript battalion. Actually, these are reservist battalion, and causing 4 casualties on them has now downgraded them, indeed, to conscripts. Okay, let's roll the discipline test for the Berg infantry. Well, that should be a pass. A 9 goes down to an 8, so they can push forward with their attack. Let's do the charge results. Okay, so this will be a +3 result to the Brunswickers because of the number of casualties they've caused. Wow, that's not great. Luckily for the Brunswickers, they do get a reroll. They're going to reroll their double 1. Not much better. It's a 3. My God, the Berg might have done well. They have 1. So the 3 goes up to a 6. Brunswickers get a 6. The Berg get a 9. So that's a test at +3. So the defender, the Brunswickers, will retreat and take 1d3 casualties. So that Brunswick battalion has been driven off table. All right, there you go. Great last gasp from the Berg infantry. Perhaps if they'd been able to pull that off earlier, the game might have gone differently. So the Berg here have broken into that wood-lined road on the way to that small farm and broken through there and driven the newly raised Brunswick conscripts off the table. But they are hugely exposed to a flank charge by that large unit of Brunswick Hussars. As I say, the Hussars and their all hands can now easily move off table, and indeed the 2 remaining units of Brunswick infantry can either choose to counterattack into the flanks of these Berg infantry or just simply again resume their march unopposed off to this table edge. So the Brunswickers have achieved their objectives. They've broken Jerome's Westphalian troops. The Berg infantry have stood up better, but they've bypassed them now and can move off table and resume their march to the sea. Great victory for the Brunswickers, and we'll now see them in the peninsula. All right, hope you've enjoyed this quick game. Cheers, and have a great day, everyone.